I know that this is the second Blind Tuesdays that is coming out on a Wednesday. Just sorry for um, sorry for just randomness and content lately. Just been just tired and honestly a little out of the loop. So I'm just trying to kind of balance out. But this is coming out though, so hopefully you guys enjoy the video. And again, sorry for the randomness and just the release of content lately. But yeah, just enjoying my time with the summer and just in a bit of a flux. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully I'll bounce back pretty soon. But yeah, but I'll just cut this little thing just to explain what's going on, and hope you guys enjoy the video. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to another Blind Tuesdays. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. I'm going to try to make this one short and sweet just because, frankly, I don't have much thoughts on this, and just want to try to make it short and sweet because typically I go for pretty long on these discussions, but I'm going to try to shoot for 10 minutes, so we'll see how this goes. But this week we are doing Blind Tuesdays once again, and this category this week is the 70s. And obviously there's a wide selection of films that I could have gone with, 70s being a really, really strong year in film. And I was set on doing Alien because Alien Romulus is coming out pretty soon. So I figured to discuss the original Alien as a precursor or some sort of, because we've discussed the other films, we haven't discussed the original, so I figured to discuss the original film. But I haven't seen the original film in a hot minute, so I would like to sit down and watch it again versus going by memory. So we'll save that for another time. So instead, I'm going to do this film because I have a stronger memory of this film, strangely enough, than I do of Alien in terms of just certain aesthetic and moods and tones. I mean, obviously, I know beat for beat what happens in that film. It's just like, you know what I mean, where it's like you kind of need to watch it to fully understand something, whereas other things you have a better impression of. So for today, we're gonna do a film that came out in 1979, so it qualifies for the 70s. And that film is Kramer versus Kramer, which was directed by Robert Benton, who I don't believe did anything real notable outside of Kramer versus Kramer. He was a screenwriter on the original Bonnie and Clyde back in 1967, and also for Places in the Heart. So he's mostly known as a screenwriter, but took the helm on Kramer versus Kramer, which stars Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep as a father and a mother, husband and wife. And the mother decides to leave for very vague reasons, to my understanding, from my memory of Kramer versus Kramer, for very vague reasons outside of neglect, potentially, between the two, him being focused on work and not dedicating as much time to his family. So Meryl Streep decides to basically abandon the family. And Dustin Hoffman is now left with his son, and throughout the years, as they are just those two together, he learns to value his son and learns to see the importance in being a father, and basically that of developing that fatherly morality. Instead of just acting on a selfish interest, he's thinking more about his son and thinking about what his son is being previewed to and what is important for his child to be, his surroundings, what he may in fact be raised into. He starts to learn more about that stuff as he is a single parent, as he is now literally forced to know those things. And then towards the end, Meryl Streep decides to return to get her child back, and of course now at this point, Dustin Hoffman has developed a bond with his son, and a legal case ensues between the two.
and hence the title Kramer versus Kramer. So, um, now the interesting thing about Kramer versus Kramer is a lot to do with the comparisons that the film gets, which I've always found to be a very odd comparison. The film that people wish to bring up mostly when it comes to Kramer versus Kramer is that of Marriage Story, and Marriage Story and Kramer versus Kramer cannot be any more just different. They are very, very different in terms of their optics because Kramer versus Kramer is more centralized than Marriage Story. And Marriage Story is more about the legal system and more about how that legal system can plague a relationship and create toxicities within a relationship. That's what Marriage Story is more or less about, and more or less about the psychology under the whole legal system, or utilizing a legal system, how that affects a person's perspective of that individual, and how things can be twisted and words can be used against you. That's what Marriage Story was about. Whereas Kramer versus Kramer is a lot more to do with a specific side. It's very one-sided in that it's about fatherhood. It's about a father dealing with their son, developing a bond with their son, learning to value them as an individual. That's what Kramer versus Kramer is more or less concerned with. And for the most part, anyway, to my memory of it, I remember finding myself in an enjoyable state. I mean, um, it's not like as rich on a narrative level. It's very much just as I said. It's about a father developing that bond with his son, and that development is rather, charming and light-hearted. I mean, there's stuff in there that could, if they switched it for a different tone, if they took it in a much more serious manner, I think that maybe that you might have a different impression of said scenes. Like the kid is previewed to like a naked woman at one point and stuff like that. But they play it up for like humor and lightheartedness, and I think that it works to the film's benefit ultimately, because it allows for this dynamic to be more comfortable and not as as hindered by a certain viewpoint. Um, but the legal side of Kramer versus Kramer does not come into play until like maybe the last like 20 minutes of the film. So the bulk of the argument of like Kramer versus Kramer being having similarities in Marriage Story, I think it's not a as strong of a comparison because of how much the legal system plays into Kramer versus Kramer. It's a secondary element. It's not the primary element. I mean, for Marriage Story it is, but not for Kramer versus Kramer. It's just not that at all. So I just never have gotten the comparison between the two films. I've never understood it at all. I think that it's just people not having a good impression of Kramer versus Kramer, honestly, and just thinking that the last 20 minutes are the film. It's not. So, um, so what you get is a portrait of fatherhood and about a father, dealing with his son and ultimately also exercising their rights as a father when someone who clearly abandons their family tries to come in and um, tries to take ownership. It's there are little things there that do become evident in those 20 minutes about like gender roles, gender politics. There are things like that are represented in those last 20 minutes, but that is not the entire point of the film. The point of the film is strictly to do with fatherhood and about that dynamic. And it was charming. It was interesting. It was mostly held by the strengths of its performances. I think that Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep, I think both do a very, very commendable job here. I don't agree with how those performances, specifically Meryl Streep's performance, I don't agree with how that performance came to be. I think Dustin Hoffman, just how she, just if you read stories about just the production, how Dustin Hoffman treated Meryl Streep, I think that was just very, very vile and very, very gross. Um, and I think highly inappropriate. I don't agree at all with how he treated her. I think that it was just very, very inappropriate. Um, it's just, yeah, just very, very not cool at all. I mean, and I'm surprised that he didn't ended up getting arrested or anything like that, because just all the stuff that happened on that set with just laying hands on her and doing things that would promote responses. and then bringing up like a dead husband just to get her to cry. It's just yeah, just stuff like that is just like very very just questionable and very just gross. But just what I am viewing, just literally just by what is being shown, you get good performances. I don't agree with how those performances were brought out, but I will say that the performances are very very solid. I like the general progression in that it is just centralizing itself within the father and son, and I liked that overall company. Again, I like this lighthearted with some seriousness embedded into it. Um, it's a film that is very just straightforward. It's not a film that really wallows in anything more dimensional outside of when you get to those last 20 minutes. Then it starts to really percolate and starts to cement other ideas. And I think that that's kind of my issue with the film ultimately, is that it doesn't really bubble as much as it just kind of just stews in this one sort of sphere, this one sort of central conceit about fatherhood and about learning to value that of your son. I wish that it did kind of present another side of things with Meryl Streep's side of things. I wish that there was kind of a dual perspective, even though clearly by how this situation is displayed, how it is ultimately comes about, how this divorce ultimately came to be, it very much is a one-sided thing. I mean, obviously you do lean on the father side of things because I mean it's practically his abandonment, but but I just wish that there was more to that. I wish that there was something to the father that we can kind of see that maybe is an issue of his. I mean, obviously, I say there's something of a selfish interest there, but I wish that there was something else there that suggests issues between the two, like abuse or temper, something to give merit to why Meryl Streep would want to leave. You know, and to when we get to the court, that there is that more of that dual that contrast where it's like I could see where she's coming from and I could see where he's coming from, versus just leaning onto that one individual. So, but as it stands, I mean, for what it is approaching, for what it is wanting to do, I think that it is enjoyable, and I think that you get really good performances that really keep it afloat. And I think that's really is the strength from Kramer versus Kramer, why ultimately gets it sits more than just the the standard of like, oh, okay, it's just father and son dynamic. I mean, you get these performances that really really work. Again, I don't agree with how they were conceived, how they ultimately came to be, but I think that they are very very good. So I think it's a good piece. I do think though it could have benefited from more dimensions, and not be so leaning onto one side of things, even though generally it might be the entire point of said film. I just wish that there was more dimensions and more of an expansion. It's giving us more of an idea of Meryl Streep's perspective. I think that would have been rather interesting. Um, but as it stands, it's good, and I think that it is very much held by the strengths of those performances, and it's good. It could have been just okay, but because of Justin Hoffman and Meryl Streep doing what they're doing, I don't agree with how they do it, how they get to that place. You get something that is rather elevated, because of that. So so yeah. So those are my thoughts on Kramer versus Kramer. I like it. I like it enough. It's good. I wish that there was just more meat to the bone rather than just about fatherhood. I wish that there was just more of a peppering of ideas versus those last 20 minutes generally kind of starting to build into something more, complex and more interesting, versus having that long period of time where it's just about that one idea. And to that point, when we get to that court scene, it's just you're completely on the father's side. I just wish that there was just more of a duality, versus just having it just be very, very centralized and focused. Interesting point to bring up about fatherhood and father's rights, but at the same time, if it's about a trio, a family, it'd be interesting just to get to understand everybody's point of view rather than just 2 out of 3, because you understand practically a lot about the father and the son, but not so much the mother. So, but those are my thoughts on Kramer versus Kramer. You guys know your thoughts on Kramer versus Kramer. If you guys have seen it, let me know your thoughts on the comparison between Marriage Story and Kramer versus Kramer. I just think people have just a bad impression of Kramer versus Kramer, but you guys let me know if you disagree or agree. And of course, this being Blind Tuesdays, I will be spinning the wheel on my own time, and whatever I land on, it will be right here, and that will be for next week's Blind Tuesdays. So there you guys have it. So let me know all your thoughts on Kramer versus Kramer, your thoughts on Dustin Hoffman's just behavior. Like, that was just vile. Like, let me know all your thoughts and any like other things about Kramer versus Kramer in terms of a production that I didn't know about. I know about purely about Dustin Hoffman and what he did, and that was just really, really terrible. But if there's anything else that I missed in terms of like production, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.